Of this event, welcome. The members on Bob's panel are Ken Hunt, Rishi Shah, Patrick Spain, and Mahendra Vora. These are world-class company founders that have all had businesses that have exceeded $100 million. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Bob, for the rest of the program. This will last 45 minutes, and then it'll be evening of networking.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Special thanks to Craig Miller and ACG and the 32 other organizations who co-hosted. I'm going to dive right in here. We're really blessed with an incredible set of talent up here on the panel. I have to start with Mahendra Vora because you are coming from a distance. Thank you for coming from Ohio for this. And you also have the distinction that when we did the book, How They Did It, you are in the book. So I have to start by picking on you, and in particular, if you could talk about Intelliseek, because that was the first home run. Tell us why you started it, what happened.
Why did we start Intelliseek? There were, I think it was 96, 97. Alta Vista, some of you might not have heard the name, Yahoo, and there was a couple of Darkfire, if you remember Darkfire, Metacrawler. So all these search engines were Google was just about coming out, and all these search engines were competing in terms of who gives you the most information, not the most relevant information. And there was no search engine to solve a business problem. So everything that we do starts with search today. And we felt like there is a tremendous need to solve a business problem, specifically understanding a brand, understanding your buzz, understanding what people are saying about your company, proactively looking at that, understanding that. And so we built a search engine specifically that was mining blogs, that was understanding sentiments of what people are saying about your brand, and we sold that to AC Nielsen in 2005.
It was incredible because you sold for $100 million. We're going to get into this later because, of course, there was a point when your venture backers said no more and stopped funding you. But we're going to save that for another question. Ken, if you could give us a little introduction. VASCO is a public company. The range of strategic things what you've gone through over the years with VASCO is fascinating. If there's a way you can get that into 1 minute, good luck. Give us a shot.
From Southern Illinois. I went to Miami. I played football, Division I team. I graduated from college. I joined IBM. I've been in high tech my whole career. I was a big business executive until I was about 40, and then I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I started a small consulting business. I decided that I needed to have a platform, and I needed currency, and I didn't have cash currency, so I took my private company public through a reverse merger. We merged into a company called Ridgepoint Enterprises, a former mining company. And I used the currency to, in large part, get to where I am today. We bought a company in Europe. I used that currency to buy that company. We were actually, everybody heard of pink sheets? They really had pink sheets. That's how they showed what the prices were. And they would print out we were on the pink sheets. And so we actually went to the NASDAQ in 1997. And we kind of explained that as our going public, but all we did was list. So now we have operations in about 22 countries around the world. Most of my business is outside the United States. Most of our customers are banks. The banks use our products for secure sign-on to their corporate customers' accounts and their retail customers' accounts. We're also very big in internet gaming, like protecting the gamers from their avatars and their weapons and their armor and their virtual money being stolen. We're big in e-government, we're big in healthcare.
Well done. We're going to drill in a little bit in the future on that reverse merger, because what you did was at a time when it was very unfashionable. What was the word you actually used earlier?
Dirty?
Shady.
Shady?
Shady. What year what was the year of the reverse merger?
It was 1986.
Yes, that was unfashionable back then, but an incredible.
And I was too dumb to know not to do it.
We like humility, we're in the Midwest here. Patrick Spain, four-time entrepreneur. Good luck as well for you encapsulating your startups, but let's give it a shot starting with Hoovers.
Okay, I'm going to start a little earlier because it's important to know where I came from. I ended up in Chicago, going to the University of Chicago, because I came to visit for an interview, having no real intention of staying here because it's too cold, and saw a building as I was waiting for my interview off to my right-hand side, wandered over there and said, oh, what a great piece of modern architecture. Chicago, I heard, was famous for that. It turned out it was Roby House. It was 1909. And at the time, you could take classes in Roby House, so when I did my interview, I asked, could I take classes there? And he said, sure, if you're interested in Middle East studies, and I was suddenly, so I did take 2 classes in Roby House, and that's how I ended up here. I did something equally practical. I majored in ancient Roman history at the University of Chicago. Came out, actually got a job working as a researcher for a consulting firm. Then, for reasons I couldn't begin to explain in a minute, I became a lawyer, realized my mistake, got a job in a high-tech company as a lawyer because they promised I could dabble on the business side, and 10 years later I was still dabbling. And then one of my colleagues from the University of Chicago called me up and said, I'm starting a book publishing company in Austin, Texas, and we're going to consumerize business information. And I listened to him, I said, you know, I'll invest, that sounds good. I said, but you know who's going to own the world someday? CompuServe. CompuServe is the future. So we need to get this book on CompuServe. He said, well, if you believe that, you should come join us. Turned out I was wrong about CompuServe, but you know, AOL and the internet came along. And Hoovers was the company, and it was, we took it public, and it was quite successful. We ended up selling it to Dun & Bradstreet for $119 million. Just barely made your cutoff. And then my wife said, she's from Chicago, she said, I'm returning to Chicago and you're welcome to join me. And so I came up here and started another company called HighBeam Research, which was a miniature version of LexisNexis, basically 100 million articles. You could do research in, we marketed it to SMBs. And then we sold that to a company called Cengage, a big education company. We spun a company called Newser out of that, which is a consumer news company that you can go to and look at for free. It's advertising supported. I was in despair for many years until last quarter last year when we finally got it profitable. Now it's a very nice business. And then, not content with that, I went into the healthcare business because a lot of issues in my family kind of drove me to say, you know, there's got to be a better way to address healthcare. So we do 2 things. We do telehealth. So if you want to talk to a doctor in 2 minutes, you can call us up and you'll be talking to a doctor about whatever your issue is. That doctor can prescribe for you, can diagnose, can handle about 50% of all the things you would go to a doctor for. The other thing we do is advocacy, which is really advice, second opinion, help with your bills, treatment options, that kind of thing. And that's a very new company, just started less than a year ago.
There is some explanation, of course, for that undergraduate history on your part that your father was an ambassador, so you had quite an international background. Not that that would explain the ancient Roman.
Well, actually, it does. He was stationed in Turkey at the time, and I went there every Christmas and summer, and there were all these damn ruins, so I needed to find out what they were. So I did.
Kind of like charging off on business expenses. I like that. So, just for the record here, because we, you know, all of the stuff we did around how they did it had this kind of $100 million threshold. Rishi is our up-and-comer. And it wasn't that we said, hey, you have to have already sold the company, you had to have already gone public. Rishi is on a tear. So even though you had not sold, you are doing so incredibly well. We wanted you to be on this panel. Tell us about ContextMedia.
Thank you. So hi, everybody. ContextMedia is a health information company. We now work with 4,000 US-based health systems, hospitals, and individual practices across all 50 states to provide them with digital patient education products. There's a variety of them now, but we actually started humbly with digital displays in the waiting area that would serve videos to patients immediately before the office visit. We now power the tablets in the exam rooms, if you've started to see those in your office visits, and also EMR, the electronic medical record, integrated messaging, pre and post appointment. So we started, out of really the intersection of three narratives. I have a couple of family members that were diagnosed with diabetes. My father is a physician who happens to treat diabetes. So growing up, I learned about as much as you could on diabetes, thankfully without getting diagnosed with it. So I happen to know a lot about it, but I never wanted to go into a healthcare career. I was really interested in technology and media. So in 2006, when we started, I was in college at the time, my first year at Northwestern, and I was really interested in mobile and location-based media. We chanced upon this technology, digital place-based media, at a conference, and fortunately, we were struck with the idea to apply it in healthcare and really put digital media into the office visit setting to serve content to improve healthcare decision-making. So that's the business.
Thanks, Rishi. So we kind of have to cut to the chase here in terms of the promise that we made to our hosting organizations was not to gloss over how hard it is to launch a company, because from the outside you see a successful company and it always appears like somebody won the lottery. And generally speaking, that's not the case, and we really appreciate that you've all agreed, because there are bloody stories and we want to hear them. My partner Olivia and I, where's Olivia? Olivia and I have now put on entrepreneur events in New York at the New York Stock Exchange, in Washington, and here in Chicago. And I'll still remember the first event we put on. Some of you were there 4 years ago. Mark Teddy was on the panel. His first public company was Lanty. And so we asked him, so you saw your stock price go from $87 down to 55 cents. How did that feel? And I still remember the moment, because everyone in their chairs went like this as he answered. So it's time for the bloody stories, and I've got to start with Mahendra, because your backers backed out. You weren't at the same point in terms of net worth with Intelliseek. What did you do when they said no more funding?
Without naming names. Yeah, I'm sure some of you know the investors we had. It was tough. We summarized the whole Intelliseek story as 7-20-4 story. 7-20-4. 7 times we practically went out of business. No funding tomorrow morning. 7 times. 20 times we ran on a payroll. 4 times we changed our business model completely. And we sold the company for a significant amount of money. We returned 5.5 times the principal to all the investors at the end. And so it was not really one moment. We had a bridge funding. The quarter was bad, the revenue was down. We had a phenomenal search product that everybody wanted to buy for free. And we had not gotten the concept that search should be free, which later on we realized. And so the sales were not there, and our venture capitalists, obviously, doing their job. We had a $3 million bridge, we had used about $1 million bridge. We had $2 million left. And they said that, it's going to be really hard for us to fund you. We're going to make that decision in 2 weeks. So, okay. So, there was a local company that was funded by General Electronic Partners. They raised $31 million. 7 guys from Harvard, no offense to Harvard. And they had spent $21 million out of $31 million. And their total cumulative revenue for 3.5 years was $43,000. Because Harvard doesn't teach you how to sell. So anyway, so now these guys have a lot of money and don't have a product. We had a phenomenal product and we had no money. We decided to do a deal with them. We signed a term sheet. I agreed to do and this is the Harvard Business Review case study. This is what I'm just telling you. We decided to do a deal. We took 25%. They got 75%. We had signed a term sheet. January 18, 2001, I believe it was. I got a call from the CEO of that company. He said, Mahendra, I got good news and bad news. I said, okay. So, which one do you want? Bad news first. He says, we can't do a deal at 25%. We have to do it at 15. I said, no, sign a term sheet. I know it's non-binding, but they must have looked at our cash and realized that these guys don't have enough money to make the next payroll. So the board, typical, very smart board, they said, he's going to sell you for $200,000, the assets. Why are we giving them 25% of our company? Anyway, he said, but I have good news, that as far as you personally are concerned, we'll give you enough stock options so that you would be as good as selling it for 25%. I said, okay, so listen, I didn't go to Harvard, so what you're telling me is I should sell my partners so I get what I really would have gotten anyway, and I should screw these people, right? That's what you're telling me? No. I said, come on. Maybe my English is my second language. Help me out. Anyway, so that was that. That deal got off. Next day morning, investors pulled out. We had $350,000 of savings that I had at that time. I connected the company's payroll to my personal account, made the payroll without any paper, fired VP of sale, carried the bag, closed $1.6 million in revenue in the next 60 days. Ford invested, InQtel CIA invested, Nokia invested, and we bought that company that offered us 15%. When we bought the same company 6 months later, when we gave them 32% or 34% or 66%. And eventually we sold the company. So yeah, a lot of moments that really test you who you are. That's the fun ride. So.
Thanks, Mahendra. So we'll now pick on Ken for a moment because VASCO, at one point, here you'd started humbly as a shell, a reverse merger, and you're flying high. The stock hits $25 a share. You've got a good present, $40 a share. It just went up 15. You're flying high. You and I met when you were more playing investor. There was a president in there, and then at some point, I think went to $2 a share, and Ken is back in as the president. Was that the low point?
Actually, it was 20 cents a share in the first quarter of 2003.
God, why didn't they buy it at 20 cents? Okay.
Well, if I can give anybody advice, as an entrepreneur, your timing has to be pretty broad. You can't necessarily think of a great idea and plan on it being bought in the marketplace. And so when I bought this company from a venture firm back in 1991, what interested me was that there was an early adopter. And my product is a software that you put on a calculator or you put on your phone. This is World of Warcraft. They sell these to their gamers to protect their avatars and their weapons, etc. And so it's all a matter of having good timing. So I bought this firm because I thought the timing was good, because ABN AMRO Bank, a big global bank, had decided to use this product. It was a big clunky thing to do online banking or provide online dial-up banking for their corporate clients. So I said to the VC, well, this company is such bad shape, what I want to do is get an option to see if I can make it work. So I went to all the creditors and I said, look, if you hang in here with me, you'll get 100% of your money due. If not, I'll close the business. Well, they hung in with me. And so I muddled along, mainly in Europe, mainly in the Benelux countries, and the banks started falling like dominoes because they followed their big competitors. But it went on and on and on. I couldn't get any sales in the United States, so I promoted one of my partners, a Belgian fellow, to CEO, and that's what Bob is talking about. And during that period, I was executive chair, and I was out doing things, and that's where I met Bob. Things went so badly during the dot-com period. I had to come back as CEO and take the company back over again. I got everybody very excited about the prospects. We cleaned up the business. I took everything I could in the fourth quarter of what was it, 2002. And so by 2003, suddenly we're profitable. And from that point on, for the next 7 years, we grew 42% compounded, very profitable, all from cash flow we raised internally. We generated over $100 million, about $117 million, all from operations. And then along came the big economic crash in Europe. And so my business went like this. Nobody likes my stock anymore much, so it's gone from 40 to 30 to about 750. But my challenge now, as an entrepreneur and a businessman, is to get back to where it was before. And I'm highly confident that I'll do it.
There is an endorsement for the stock. Patrick, let's see. HighBeam, you could say in a way, took on this little player called Google. And then Newser, you could say, took on, I don't know, 1,000 news sites. And now you've taken on this small, teeny-weeny little challenge with First Stop Health called healthcare in an age of Obamacare, which, does anyone understand it? Are you a glutton for punishment? What was the bloodiest moment?
The bloodiest moment, well, that's hard. I am a glutton for punishment. All entrepreneurs are. My biggest problem, and this, when I got married, went in for pre-Cana, and after talking to the Catholic priest for 6 or 7 sessions, he said, I've never told anybody this, but you seem to have a real authority problem with the Pope. You should consider Episcopalianism. I am now Episcopalian. So I just don't, I don't work well with bosses. So I like to be able to control what I'm doing and have things my own way. And that's why I became an entrepreneur. There's a lot of pain involved. I'm actually, most of the pain was at Hoovers. Your first one is usually your hardest. And so, as I said, we started as a book publisher, and the whole idea was mass distribution. So for our first book, we did 546 companies and printed 100,000 copies, and got ready for the unbelievable orders from bookstores. Well, we got 56 orders, 56,000 orders, sorry. But then 35,000 of those came back. So that was like a disaster. So, kind of not knowing any better, we just did it again the next year. We did another book. We said, well, we'll sell this one better. And it was the worst disaster. And so we'd run through our $1.5 million, and my partner, Gary Hoover, who was the founder and CEO, said to me, how do you like to take over the company? I said, oh, great. But I did. And we started going digital at that point. There was no internet, and there was CompuServe, and there was a little company called AOL. Couldn't get anywhere with CompuServe, and had to end up with AOL, which turned out to be the right place. But I can tell you that I've never had more vivid dreams, and they consisted of only 2 dreams. One was an airplane crashing. It was a DC-3, and I usually didn't survive the crash. Every 1 out of 4 or 5 I survived. The other was tornadoes that chased me into tornado shelters, and every night that's what I dreamt. As soon as I took over the company, we were completely out of money, so I went to our main benefactors, a wonderful family in Kansas City, and we went down and we said, well, in order to meet payroll like day after tomorrow and keep the doors open, we need some money. And they treated us to a nice dinner at their house, and we're kind of pitching them, and I said, and by the way, there were 3 of us. We only bought one-way tickets, so we're staying here if you don't give us some money. And so I think they would have given it to us anyway, but they found that very amusing. And really, it's that, how do you get enough money given that you don't know what the timing is going to be? And in every company I've been in, you're dependent upon timing. We've been fortunate enough to be directionally correct, and I think healthcare is a good example. We know where it's going to end up. We don't know whether that's 20 years from now or 2 years, and how fast it's going to evolve from the 2 to 20 years, but we, the consumers, are eventually going to be in charge. We're not in charge at all now. We don't have the tools, We don't have the habits, but we're eventually going to be in charge. And so the question is, where do you drop yourself into that slipstream to make sure that you don't spend all your money, and that you remain flexible enough to find the right ways. And we're doing that in healthcare now. I said, oh, this is a no-brainer. This is a $2.8 trillion market. It's easy to make money. It's not. It's very tough. And news, when we entered the news business in the U.S., it was a $125 billion business. It's now an $85 billion business. And yet we've managed to fight that trend and become very profitable in the news business. So market size sometimes doesn't tell you everything. And it's really, you go in, and directionally we knew that news was going to go to little bits of information and little pictures. And if we could get the bits and the pictures mixed together right, we would have a successful news site. And it's called Newser. And for those of you who haven't put it on your iPhones or Android phones, please do. We give you 45 stories a day that tells you everything you need to know, and 10 stories you don't need to know, but should amuse and entertain you, particularly if you're interested in the Kardashians. They're the most read stories. I'm sorry, it pains me no end, but those kinds of stories do very well. So it's really about persistence, and it's about the pain of knowing you're right, not having enough money, and not quite getting the execution right the first, second, or third time. And it's a lot of pain, but I believe it's not just the success that you sometimes get at the end of it, but it's the joy of figuring out things and learning things as you're going through life.
If nothing else, we're going to pick up 212 Newser users today.
Excellent.
Rishi, no offense, but you were not the first guy to think up the idea of putting a screen into a professional office and then putting content through it. And yet you've been incredibly successful with it. So was the toughest point of this just raising money initially?
Yeah, there was lots of blood in our story, but that's a common thread, I think. Raising money was particularly, as you call it, bloody or difficult, and ultimately we didn't do it. So we got to zero to now, 20 million in EBITDA run rate without any institutional capital. So that made for a very, very difficult journey, particularly for a few reasons. So one, it was CapEx heavy, right? We've got to buy these screens to go build this network at some degree of critical mass so we can go convince advertisers to give us money in the form of advertising. So where are we going to get the dollars from? So we went to investors. Now I'm 19 when we start this, and I go to all the venture capitalists we can, which you could count on two hands back in Chicago in those days in 2006-07. And Scott Clixon, we just saw in the audience, made probably half the introductions. So we go in and we say, oh, we have this idea. And they say, well, this is kind of crazy. You've never sold into healthcare. And that would be hard enough, but if you're successful selling into the healthcare providers, that's only a business cost. You then have to go do an enterprise sales cycle into pharma manufacturers and CPGs and med device companies and create a new line item in the budget. So this is crazy. So we struck out. We got a couple term sheets, but they were really bad. So we just kept at it. And fortunately for us, we got some revenue pretty early. And we didn't know any better. That's a good line. So in 2007, we went to the pharmaceutical manufacturers and we sold a network for 2008. And we just said, this is what we're going to have. And we used those commitments, and somehow we negotiated some prepayments to go build a network. Now in the meantime, while we were doing that, we went to all the providers we could, the hospitals, and had them sign a piece of paper that said, we will take the installation on such and such date in December of 2007. Not having the resources yet to fulfill it. And it's kind of like, chicken and the egg. It's sort of, you have to strike and somehow time it exactly so both happen at the same time. And we made it, but it was very difficult and dangerous because if you sold one and not the other, you couldn't deliver. And so, that's right. So it was very, very difficult. And even after that, for the first couple of years, because we didn't have institutional funding, you were always running on the edge. You knew it was working. You had the sales, but sometimes your receivables would be really high. You didn't have the money yet. You don't have institutional money, so just making payroll, those sorts of things were tough. And you felt like every morning you would wake up in a boxing ring. As soon as you were awake, there was some existential threat fighting you. you're getting punches. And this probably stopped after 2008 or 9, where all of a sudden the things I was working on were no longer truly existential threats. The business was going to survive, it was profitable, now we were thinking about how fast can we grow it. And it's very disorienting. I remember calling my co-founder, Shah, one day, and I said, are we missing something? It seems like there's not something lurking around the corner that could kill us if we don't figure it out. And it's quite a moment. It happens very quickly, and it's disorienting.
That's great. This is my final question, then we're going to ask you all if you want to throw out questions. Mahendra, you said something in the book which has stuck with me for years. You said when we first talked years ago, you said you better have a painkiller and not a vitamin. And I took from that you better be solving some problem. You better take pain away from the customer. You better not just have something that is shiny and looks good. And I'm just curious for all of you, when you launched, did you hit it right the first time in terms of the problem, the pain you were taking away from a customer? I suppose you could use any one of your business. You got a lot of businesses to look at, but you still feel that it's always you better have a painkiller, not a vitamin.
Yes, and we're still struggling. You would think that after at least 20 startups and after 8 or 10 exits and now running a small fund, you would learn that. But no, it's not easy. And the problem is we fall in love, and you know what we call, like, if you ask any VC, ask any investor, angel, says, and when they go back to that office and talk about the meeting, so the guy really was passionate. The team, this girl is really passionate. That passion sells. When I tell people that passion alone, passion without thought, can only create unwanted children. So, it's okay to be passionate, but you have to solve a problem. And the problem is that there's so many times, especially creators and innovators, they fall in love with the idea to the extent that they'll put narcissists to shame. They think that they are the only, every user is like that. Every user in this world. How can you not see a need for it? Well, I don't. So one of the, just a small distraction is one of our creators, one of our inventors, I told him, he's our founder and CEO, I said, I don't think people will buy it. This is a nice to have, it's not a must have. There is no budget line item. There is no pain you're solving. He says, you know what, I'm going to create the tagline for the company, making smart people smarter. And then I'm going to ask my customers, are you my audience? I said, that's not going to solve the problem. And so I think we have struggled there. And seriously, the biggest thing that I ask all the creators is to ask yourself, if this was your last dollar, will you buy this product? If you were making a decision to buy this product, will you buy it? Are you really solving a problem? And the only way, and I'm a very technical person, so I'll tell you in geek language, only way to solve, especially with software, and I don't know every other industry, the only thing I know is IT, in terms of business. In software, if you're not doing something that's humanly impossible, or if you're not doing something that can take thousands of hours of work into a few minutes, it's not a painkiller. Everything else is a vitamin. And we never, vitamins are very, very expensive, very time consuming to sell. And so I always tell all of our, we own a large research labs, we have an incubator. Tell all of our creators and founders, please make sure there's a painkiller, not a vitamin.
Ken, how about you? With VASCO, did you hit pain first time through? Did you hit the problem, or did you have to pivot?
Well, the pain is what drives our business, of course. And in we look for verticals where there is common pain. In the banking business, because there's hacking going on all the time, we know that the banks are afraid to lose their reputation, their brand, so they have to do something about it. I think I mentioned before the gaming business. I would have never thought that was an opportunity, but thank goodness for the hackers, they hacked in, and so suddenly all the gamers are up in arms with Blizzard Entertainment and World of Warcraft, so they demonstrated what the pain was. And we're always looking for that. Another example of pain is ASPs that have subscriptions. We have a firm that has an online MLS. You all know what MLS is? And this is for commercial properties. And the name of the firm is CoStar. And they've got a wonderful online database of commercial properties, and it's very valuable to the brokers, the commercial brokers. But about 7 or 8 years ago, they found out that the brokers would buy one subscription for an office and pass around their username and passwords to all the other brokers. So as soon as they found that out, they thought, well, how do we stop this? And so they've been a very good customer of ours, because every one of their broker customers has to have their own subscription, their own username, and a DigiPass. So we're always looking for that kind of opportunity. Because, I'll give you one last example. Because a lot of companies have grown through acquisitions, there's one opportunity we're working on where there are productivity tools under one brand name, and maybe 100 silos of these different companies that they've bolted on over 15, 20 years, something like that. And it's very difficult for a customer to go to the brand, go to the center, and sign up for all these other productivity tools, and in a reasonable way, get access to those individual tools. So that's another example where it's pain and it's lack of convenience. So we try to solve those two things. Solve security, but provide it in a convenient, easy way to use.
Patrick, we'll stay focused for a moment on First Stop Health as a current example. When you, from the point of first thinking of the idea, did you nail it in terms of what the pain is that your customer has, or is that pivoted given what's going on with healthcare?
So we're still learning. All of us as patients are being retrained and have to retrain ourselves in a world where we're almost at 20% of GDP going into health. We have a huge access issue. I mean, we're going to be 60,000 primary care physicians short by the end of this decade. And so alternative forms of primary care have to come into the marketplace. And you've seen many of them, Walgreens and CVS, and you don't see many urgent care centers in Illinois because the hospitals here have managed to crush them so that they can't operate here in the way they operate in other states where they're like Starbucks and provide incredibly affordable health care. And telehealth has been out there for a long time. It was first used to treat prison populations. But there's a psychological issue around, well, can I really talk to the doctor on the phone? Doesn't he have to see me? Don't I have to go in and be examined? And the answer is no, you don't. 50% or more of the time you do not need an exam, and you do not need to see the doctor face to face, and you can get what you need done. But we're not used to that. And furthermore, we've never paid for it. We just go in, we pay our copay, and that's it. And so we have this, this challenge around we can't, as a small company, educate the public. So the challenge is, where are the places you can go where there is pain? And so we look at self-insured companies, because right there, if you can help a population, an employee population of a self-insured company, not go to the doctor, that's an immediate savings for the employer. It's not a future reduction in rates. It's not convenience for the employee, which employers care about but find hard to quantify. And so as we've been out in the marketplace, we've learned, here are the areas. I mean, we had no idea, but the most exciting area for us is any company with a workforce that's in the field. Oil services, trucking companies, and all, because these are guys who are out, in the case of the oil services company, they're 150 miles from the nearest town, sitting, watching mud come out of a hole. And if they have a healthcare problem and they decide to go see a doctor, it's a day away from the drill. And that's a huge problem. And so, these people are enthusiastic about it. That was not a market we envisaged when we first went into it. And so as you go out into the marketplace, as you listen to your customers, as you bounce your ideas off people, you find out who it resonates with. The other group of people that we didn't expect it would resonate with is lawyers. When law firms are billing between $300 and $500 per hour on average, if you go to the doctor, you just lost yourself $600-700 of billable hours. And so that's a very interesting opportunity, completely different from the oil services guy who's worried about taking a day off and the cost of going, because they go to an ER, they don't go to a doctor, they go walk in the ER after having spent basically a day round trip. And so we're learning every day, and you never ever get it right the first time. And we're still working at figuring out what the right areas are.
Rishi, did you get it right the first time? The premise with the doctors, the premise with the patients in terms of what the content was going to be, or did you have to pivot?
Yeah, we didn't formally pivot in the sense that, our business plan, which we actually wrote, which you don't do anymore. But we had a business plan. It actually spelled out pretty much exactly what we've done. But that doesn't mean we hit it right away, because this vitamin versus a painkiller thing is a very interesting paradigm through which to look at it. In some ways, we're more a vitamin. And that was very hard. The reason it was so hard is what's the difference between a painkiller and a vitamin, right? A vitamin, ostensibly, if it's a good one that works, is preventing pain. But the difference is the pain is later. So you're not conscious of the pain that you are preventing or solving for. That's how we felt. So in healthcare, in order to do anything, you've got to convince multiple stakeholders it makes sense. So one sale is never usually enough. It's either the provider and the payer, or the pharma and the payer, pharma and the provider, patients, some combination thereof. So the person feeling the most pain is usually the patient, but they're not the ones you have to sell. You have to sell the intermediaries. So you have to go sell the providers. In our case, we have to go sell pharma. Now, there was pain there, but because we were building a new line item, they weren't aware it could be done better. So we came with a much better ROI than what they were currently doing, which is putting messages out across a TV medium, barely breaking even. But because they didn't know about it, it wasn't enough to service existing demand. You had to originate new demand. That's extraordinarily difficult to do. It's very, very difficult to truly originate new demand, because in an organization, people buy, companies don't buy. So some person has to work to create a line item that they don't individually control, and there's a lot of risk in doing that, not necessarily a lot of personal return. So that's what I would say. We didn't necessarily change our core model, but there were a lot of lessons and pain felt through that process to truly build the line items and mini industries we needed to build to create this sort of business.
But the concept of painkiller, right? It's about who is paying you. Who is your client who is writing you the check? Are you solving the problem? Like in your case, the average patient waits for 28 minutes in a doctor's facility. That's the last time I read. And these people, obviously, you feel horrible. I cannot wait. But the fact that I have something to read, something to learn. So you're solving really doctor's problem. You're not solving patient's problem. So as long as you're solving your payer's problem, it's a painkiller.
Thank you. We're running a little long. Do y'all want to stick around for a little Q&A or just start drinking? Regardless, actually, I am now at the spouse appreciation moment. I want to thank my lovely wife, Sharon, for being here. And also, Mahendra's wife, Sangeeta, is here. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, do you want to do one Q&A, Craig, or does anybody have a burning question? A brilliant question better come out here. Now I put too much pressure on you. Okay, yes?
Yeah, so what is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you were 30?
When you're implying they're over 30. Rishi, this doesn't, we're going to let one person. The question is, what do you know now you wish you would have known at some point in the past? And so we're going to...
I actually think that's like, I'm more interested in around that age, right? Because I think
Yes.
when you're at around 28 to 35,
It's a great question. Who has a burning desire to answer that?
I think each one of us is different. We should have a short answer. In my case, VP of sales is the most important hire for any company you start. The most important hire. And every time we have made a mistake on VP of sales, it has taken 4 times the money, 4 times the time to get to the point that we had to be. So in my case, that's one learning.
Another question? Or another answer?
Yeah, I agree that 100%. It was harder than I thought. It took longer than I thought. It took more money than I thought. And you just can't give up. You know, that's the message.
So I'll echo sales, by far the most important thing, but I'll give you a different one. I wish I knew this when I started. I didn't appreciate it. So when you have a set of founders, it's important, incredibly important, that you think through what each of them are going to do. There are too many startups where that doesn't happen. Who's going to do what? What are the roles going to be? And there has got to be incredible chemistry, because no matter what journey you go down, there are going to be a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And you've got to have a matched sense of vision around roles, around product, around the company, and just chemistry. So if you're going into business, make sure there's chemistry across the board.
Yes.
Right now, how would you approach potential investors? Learning what you learned through your experiences versus how you approach those investors initially.
Knowing what you know, how would you approach investors now?
I'll start. So one is, it's very difficult to convince people you have a good idea. Go prove it first. You can prove it in simple ways. Get some basic sales, so the discussion becomes about, okay, this is a validated idea, now how big can it be, and can this person execute it? But don't argue with people who don't know your market or your area about the idea if you don't have to. Go prove it.
Mine is, don't use PowerPoint. Don't write huge business plans. Focus on the demo and focus on the client that you've created a success story. Make people, give real life example of why somebody's using your product, now why the rest of the world is going to use your product, and stay away from hockey stick discussions.
Stay away from the hockey stick. Yes?
Just a quick question. I was kind of puzzled about the comment about not needing to write a business plan any longer, that's not done anymore. What is that about?
Question is that why is it business plans are no longer needed?
Yeah, it's a loaded matter in 30 seconds, and I will say there are many industries where that advice doesn't hold. If you're building a life sciences business or one of those sorts of things, you need that. But my comment is, in the consumer internet space and increasingly enterprise, where you've got early stage tech companies, the amount of capital required to start those businesses is incredibly low. Most seed rounds now are under $500,000, right? Series A checks are larger, but you normally have founders that in the first year are expected to validate the business works by prototyping, right? And then getting customers on board. So the route to 100,000 in recurring monthly revenue if you're an enterprise software business, or to some number of users if you're a consumer internet business, is far more important than spending 3 months building a 60-page business plan. If you go and talk to Linda Darrow, who run the Entrepreneurship program at Kellogg, she'll tell you that. I was on a panel with her just last week, and she said we teach students not to do business plans anymore because that's not what gets money in the door, and it's not what's productive. It's much more iterative. So the goal isn't let's predict the business 2, 3, 4 years from now. Nobody expects the entrepreneur to do that. The goal is to get the most done in the next 3 months, go sell, and then keep iterating. Using what's happening in the market to iterate and build product better.
Yes, question?
So once you've already developed a product and you've gone through the pains of finding that pain and getting people to convince that you've already convinced to purchase your product or service, what's the number one issue that you run into in ramping up your sales and expanding your sales organically, not mergers, once you have an established product that you know is successful?
Number one issue, ramping up sales organically.
Well, I think in our case, once you have a base, what you want to do is to nurture that vertical market like banking or healthcare, whatever. And you either need to build more product yourself, or you need to find other companies that have started up their little business. They've gotten their funding, they've gotten their first customers, the product actually works, it's demonstrated that it works. And so in our case, what we always try to do is to find small companies that we call technology tuck-ins. We integrate it into the company, we add it to our product portfolio, and then we go.
I call it the transition. If you look at your initial team, by the way, Rishi, what you said about business plan, I absolutely could not agree with agree more with it. I mean, it's phenomenal. That's all people should focus on, building the product and demos and at your clients. But you know, the biggest thing about a transition of a company, when you get to prove the product, you have a few clients, the team, which is primarily innovative in the beginning, you know, burning midnight oil, doing whatever it takes, you know, we used to call, you know, deliver the products with duct tapes around them. Transitioning that to a scalable model, you need to know as the founder that it's time for me to bring more operational excellence people and not just creative people. And those founders who know that when to make the transition and when to say, I am not the CEO anymore, or at least surround themselves by people who are operational excellence focused, who will do things that you as a founder will find boring, who will talk about building a team, about training people. I know a lot of founders, founding CEOs. It's like, what do you mean training? Why are you spending so much time building materials? Come on, bring everybody in the room, show them the product, show them the demo, let them go sell it. And there are people, and then you get a new VP of sales who has got tremendous experience and who focuses on building a team, building training, you know, programs, etc. So I think when you make transition, that you're going from innovative culture to not just innovative culture, to operational excellence culture, then all the scaling will come with it.
Eric Hultman, Eric Hultman, you want last question? Or Bob Lambert? Quick, go.
Bob, he's my guest. Yeah, with collective wisdom up there, and one of the questions that we asked, I thought was a great question. In looking back, we also, almost to the person up there, discussed and talked about sales and how important that was. But yet we find in their schools, the education of sales is lacking. So how can you comment on that? What types of things would you give any advice to the audience as far as what sales, how the importance of it, and how do you go about getting the right people to that?
How do you educate for sales, get the right people? Ken?
Well, in our case, as a small business, when we were first getting started, I was the salesman. And I came from IBM, and I was a award-winning new business salesman in the Southeast 7 states. But as you grow, you have to find other salespeople that have your same traits. You can't afford to hire somebody right out of college. You have to hire somebody that has proven that they know how to sell. So that's the way we've done it.
Yeah. I think one of the, yes, how do you do it? I think one of the keys is either you as a founder or somebody that's very senior and core to your team, you have to wake up and go to sleep thinking about sales. You have to be a role model about it in the first year. And that's got to be the mission critical point of the company. And then even as you scale after that, there are going to be times where some of the engineers or operating folks, they start to think the business exists for them, not for the customers. They think, well, do we really have to do that? And it's just an ethic. You have to treat customers like they're your first, your last. And I think that has to come right from the top. There's so many other things you could do, but you know, it's tough because in an academic setting, what's prized, what gets an A+, is analysis, right? It's incremental analysis and getting to the right point. It's a little bit different in business. It's really selling. And so you've just got to set that model. Like Techstars, which is a local tech accelerator, they started here this past summer by having all the founders not work on the business, but see who could sell the most bottles of water for the most money. That's a little funny, but you know, it makes the point that business is going to be about those sorts of things and not about academic debates.
I don't know how to solve the problem of bringing more sales education in academic institutions, but I certainly know that how companies can change it. Especially a lot of high-tech companies, a lot of early-stage companies. You need to have a culture of sales. And a lot of times you meet technical people and they think sales is an S word. It's like, I don't do sales, excuse me? Who doesn't do sales? You know how much I had to sell to bring her here with me? You have to sell. We sell to our parents, we sell to our teachers, we go and say, why is B+, and if you change this thing, I can get A-. We sell for money, say, Dad, send me more money. We sell every day. And then when you create a culture to say selling is so important. If you are a technical founder, and if you sell, our salespeople are the most important people, and if you go and say that in front of all your employees, that company will have the culture. So these are the people who are making our payroll. These are the people, that's our spinal cord. So I think culture of sales, culture of winning, culture of closing, culture of deals that give you the enjoyment and brings the energy in your day. Because products take a long time. If you look at the gratification cycle of a product, you don't release a product every 1 hour and say, hey, we got one feature done. So the whole company is excited. You release products 2 months in agile, maybe you do it sooner, but 6 months. But sales is something you can bring every single day. You feel there's a sense of fulfillment. And so I think if you create the culture inside, it can go a long way, making the company more successful.
Mahendra,
Just one comment. I mean, we celebrate sales. We write them up. We actually write them up in front of the engineers because they have no idea how all this works. But so it's right in their area where we write sales up. Kind of the only thing I've discovered about hiring good salespeople is you have to slightly, and only slightly, dislike them. If they're really likable, they're not going to be a good salesperson. And if you really dislike them, they're also not going to be a good salesperson. So they have to be pushy and aggressive, but they have to know when to back off. And I've had my best success with people who are just a little pushier than I'm comfortable with. So that's one piece of advice.
Mahendra, Vora, Ken Hunt, Patrick Spain, Rishi, Shah, thank you so much. My thanks to Craig Miller and Terry Cobb, the team at ACG, and to all of the co-host organizations, Karen and Eric. Thank you all, and thank you all for being here. Thanks, Matt, everybody.